Welcome, dear listener. Tonight, we journey into the mists of legend, to a place where time flows like water, and silence holds the weight of memory. This is the story of how she came to be, the Lady of the Lake. Not born, but remembered. Not summoned, but dreamed into being. By the forest, the waters, and the magic that lives quietly in the heart of the world. A tale whispered through ancient winds, carried on moonlit ripples, and waiting just for you. So settle in, let your breath slow, and let us return together to where it all began. The Origins of the Lady, a whispered tale from the mists of Evermere. Long before the lake had a name, before the stars knew where to shine in its waters, there was only silence. A hush so deep, even the wind dared not parse. Yet deep within the valley where the lake would one day rest, the earth began to hum with ancient breath. She was not born as others are. No cradle, no kin, no time to call her own. She was shaped by the longing of the land itself, a wish the forest whispered, a lullaby the river never forgot. And so, beneath a pale blue dawn, the lady opened her eyes for the very first time. Not to see, but to feel. Not to speak, but to listen. For she was made not to rule, but to guard. To love, but never to possess. She was the first sigh of stillness, and the lake had begun to dream of her. She wandered softly through the morning mist, her bare feet brushing dew from the grass like a blessing. The animals did not startle. Even the fawns bowed their heads, for they sensed something in her that was both newborn and eternal. The trees leaned in, offering shade. The winds curled around her, threading her hair with silver strands of song. And far below, the waters gathered, not rushing, but waiting. She was drawn to their stillness. The hush matched her own breath. She knelt by the spring that fed them, and as her fingers touched the water, it glowed with a quiet light, a shimmer like moonlight caught in a sigh. Thus the lake knew her name, though no words had yet been spoken. In dreams that came not with sleep, but with deep remembering, she began to know the world, not through maps or voices, but through the pulse of the soil, the laughter of leaves, the sorrow of old stones. And in one such vision, she saw the first weaver, an ancient fae with hands like folded twilight, who spun silver threads across the sky, and called them stars. Why was I made? The lady asked, though her lips barely moved. The weaver only smiled. You are not made. You are remembered. And with that, the dream dissolved, but the warmth of it remained, like a melody that lingers, long after the last note fades. The days passed like feathers drifting in wind. She learned to walk with the quiet things, the fox in the hedgerow, the owl beneath the bough. But the lake called to her most of all. Its voice was never loud. It didn't roar or beckon. It simply or waited. Each morning, she would sit beside it, letting the silence between them knit something unspoken and whole. And one dusk, as the sky bled amber, the water stirred. A shape rose, fluid and glowing. Not beast, not spirit, but both. A creature of the old world, a guardian before the guardians. Its eyes shimmered like the deepest part of night. "You are the chosen," it whispered, though not by rule, but by resonance. She did not speak. She only placed a hand over her heart, and the creature bowed. A grove of white-barked trees formed a circle near the northern bend. None dared cross into it, not even the wind. Yet one twilight she entered, not with boldness, but with reverence. The air shifted around her, a curtain of shimmering light, like falling petals, draped over the trees. There, in the heart of the grove, she saw them, the Fae, not winged children of folklore, but tall, still beings, with eyes like ancient skies, and voices that echoed eternity. They spoke not in words, but in knowing, and they offered her a gift and a burden, the heartstone of the lake, smooth, opalescent, humming softly. "It binds you to the waters," they said, "and it frees you from all else." She took it with both hands, and the sky wept a single silver rain. That night, the lady could not sleep, not from restlessness, but from the gentle weight of something vast stirring within her. The heartstone now rested just beneath her collarbone, glimmering faintly with each breath, as though it had always been there. She sat beside the lake as stars bloomed overhead, and when she closed her eyes, she felt everything: the depth of the waters, the rustle of reeds, the quiet stirring of fish far below. She was no longer merely near the lake. She was of it. And though her face remained calm, a tear traced down her cheek. Not sorrow, not joy, something deeper. Belonging. Time moved in odd rhythms now. Seasons did not parse her, as they did others. They danced with her. Autumn laid its leaves at her feet, like offerings. Winter whispered secrets in frost upon her fingertips. Spring crowned her in petals, and summer bowed with golden hush. Travelers began to speak of her, not in certainty, but in wonder. A woman by the lake, they'd say, or perhaps a spirit, or a dream. But those who approached with kindness would find their hearts eased, their fears softened, and the weight they carried lifted by the breeze. Not all believed, but the lake believed, and that was enough. There came a time when shadows walked with feet, not evil, but hunger, the kind that forgets beauty and tramples peace to claim power. Men came with axes and iron and loud thoughts. They spoke of draining the lake, of taming the land, of profit. The lady stood by the shore. As the trees quivered, she raised no weapon, cast no spell. But when they looked at her, truly looked, Something ancient stirred behind their eyes. They saw not a woman, but the memory of stillness, the ache of something once known and longed for. And they turned away, not from fear, but for more. Not all threats are loud. Some arrive like mist, unseen until they seep through everything. One spring, the waters grew ill, dark, sluggish, strange. Fish floated belly up. The reeds fell silent. The lady wandered far, beyond the lake's edge, to the source. There she found it, a mine dug deep and careless, where stones were torn from the earth, without thanks, where greed echoed louder than wind. She stepped into the shaft, barefoot, glowing, and the mine fell silent. Tools dropped, voices stilled, and those within felt their dreams unravel, until all that remained was the taste of still water and the sound of their own hearts. By morning, the mine was abandoned, and the spring began to sing again. On the eve of her 100th year, though no one marked it but the stars, the lady stood in the shallows, with the moon silvering her skin. She hummed a melody that had no origin, no language, only presence. The water mirrored her completely, and from its depths, a ring of light unfurled, slow, sacred, like a promise. Within it, the lake spoke, not in words, but in visions, of those yet to come, of children who would laugh along its banks, of griefs it would one day soothe, of lovers whose first kiss would tremble in its mist. And the lady smiled. She would be there, for the lake was not her prison, nor her burden. It was her heart, and it would never stop dreaming. Through time, the lady became a part of every breath the lake took. When fog blanketed the shore, she walked among it, unseen but felt. Children spoke of her in whispers, not with fear, but with wonder. She listens, they'd say. If you speak gently to the water, she'll carry your wish. And sometimes, wishes came true. A lost toy returned. A storm passed by. A tear dried faster than it should. Not all knew her story, but all knew her presence, like the hush before snowfall, or the warmth of a hand you didn't know you needed. There were those who sought her out, mystics, wanderers, broken hearts. They came from distant places, drawn by dreams they could not name. Some brought gifts, a feather, a poem, a stone. Others brought only silence, and the ache of needing peace. She greeted them all the same, with soft eyes, and the stillness of water that asks nothing in return. She never gave answers, only clarity. She never healed, but helped them remember how to begin healing themselves. And when they left lighter. One winter, the lake froze, not just on the surface, but deep, deep down. The lady stood upon the ice, a quiet figure in white, her breath like soft halos in the air. It was a silence even she felt lonely in. For the hearthstone, too, grew dim. Until, one night, a stag approached, crowned with branches, eyes like burning dusk. He bared his head, and with a gentle touch of his nose against her palm, the frost cracked, not in ruin, but in release. The waters sighed, the cold lifted, and the lady bowed in return. For not all guardians are bound to the lake. Some walk the world in silence, just as she does. The villagers eventually built a shrine, not out of worship, but gratitude. Just a stone bench beneath a willow, facing the water. No statues, no prayers, only a place to sit and remember that quiet is sacred. Sometimes, someone would leave a flower. Other times, a letter folded carefully. She read every one, not with eyes, but with the part of her that once rose from mist and memory. And though she never answered aloud, the water would ripple gently whenever someone spoke her name with kindness. In time, she came to be called the Lady of the Lake. Not by herself. She had no need for names, but by those who loved the stillness she offered. Legends grew, as they do. Some claimed she was a fairy, others a ghost, a forgotten queen, a banished goddess. None were quite right, but none were wrong either. For she was not one thing. She was the space between things, the hush before dawn, the breath held during snowfall, the reflection that looks back with more understanding than the face you wear. There was a day, bright and golden, when a child wandered too far from the village, drawn by a butterfly, lost among the reeds. She did not cry, but the air around her trembled with a quiet worry. The lady found her sitting beside the water, eyes wide, cheeks flushed. She knelt beside the girl. No words spoken, just the gentle brushing of hair behind one ear, the warmth of a smile that said, "You are safe." The girl stood, took her hand, and together they walked back through the twilight fields. When the villagers saw her return, they asked, "Who helped you?" The girl only pointed toward the lake and said, "She did." Some nights, the lady would hum a soft, ageless melody that rippled across the water and stirred dreams in the sleepers nearby. Fishermen would wake at dawn, claiming they had seen her dancing upon the lake's mirrored skin. Elders would nod and smile. "She's remembering," they'd say, "for even water has memories." In her song, there were echoes of times before men, before roads, before forgetting. And the lake would listen, cradling her voice, as though it, too, feared the silence that would come. Once she stopped. One stormy eve, lightning cracked the sky, and rain fell like broken glass. Winds howled, trees bent low. The lake churned, uneasy. But at its heart, the lady stood, calm. Arms raised, hair soaked, the heartstone gleaming like a second moon. She spoke, not loudly, but with a voice that the sky heard. And it answered, not with silence, but with softening. The storm settled. The wind curled back into itself. And the villagers found, the next morning, that not a single tree had fallen, nor boat had broken loose. Only one set of footprints marked the damp shore, and beside them, a single wildflower had bloomed. There are still places around the lake where time forgets itself, where the moss is thick and the light bends strange. And if you step carefully, you might hear a song that doesn't seem to come from anywhere at all. She remains, not as a figure always seen, but always near. A glimmer in the mist, a warm wind in winter, a voice inside a dream, telling you that you are more than the world has led you to believe. And when you whisper into the waters, your hopes, your regrets, your questions, she hears you, always, and so she stays. Not out of duty, not from sorrow, but because the lake loves her, and she loves it back. She is its stillness, its guardian, its breath between seasons. And if ever you find yourself at its edge, late at night, with the moon high and your heart quiet, you might see her, standing there, barefoot in silver light, watching you, with eyes that have known both the beginning and the becoming. And if you do, smile, she'll smile back, and carry your peace across the still waters, until morning finds you whole again. And now, the lake sleeps once more, its guardian watching, its waters still, its story gently folded back into the hush of night. May you carry her calm into your own dreams, and feel her presence whenever the world feels too loud. She is always near, in the wind, in the quiet, in the stillness. So close your eyes now, drift gently, and let the water cradle you, as sleep takes your hand. Good night. you.